Hi everyone, and welcome to this fireside chat at the SBC Digital North America show. I'm Joe Streeter, the editor of Payment Expert, and it's my pleasure to bring to you this really intriguing fireside chat today, where we'll discuss what's been a crazy period that we've been in, and a crazy period of transformation that we've gone through as an industry. We want to talk about how this is impacting the industry and how you can win and retain new customers through digital advertising. We have a really good panel today, so it gives me great pleasure to hand over to them to introduce themselves. Dave, if we could start with yourself.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joe. My name is Dave O'Mara, co-founder at Spirable. And just to give a little bit of background on Spirable, so we started Spirable 7 years ago. We had a vision that was, and still is, to enable brands to inspire people with useful content. And essentially, digital is enabling this shift. Previously we've had a generic one-size-fits-all creative, so everybody gets the same creative. We're in a world now where creative can be more personalized, more relevant, and contextual. And this is essentially, driven by the digital channels and social in particular. We have, on these digital channels, a much better understanding of audiences, and as a result of this, we have the opportunity to make creative more tailored. And I think why this shift to more relevant creative is so important is, in the kind of world that we're in today, it's extremely competitive. So if you're advertising on digital, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of other brands advertising. There's a lot of friends content. You've got to compete as a brand with all of this. So to really cut through, the creative is the key, and that's something we'll talk about later. Is how creative is becoming even more important with the kind of latest changes in terms of audience targeting and data collection that happens. So to kind of summarize what we do for our clients in the sports betting vertical, a key challenge that they have is essentially the industry moves really fast. There's a ton of events. There's really, you've got the Euros coming up, for example. You've got loads of games just in one sport alone. So really to keep up with creating relevant content, you've got to essentially have a process that automates that. And that's what we do at Spirable. We're a self-serve platform that enables brands to deliver these experiences across digital channels. And we essentially partner and have deep integrations with all the digital channels. So that's everyone from Facebook, Twitter, Snap, Google for YouTube, DV360. Essentially a full workflow that enables this. So we're empowering brands to scale their creative and be more agile and efficient with their process. So this is the first kind of thing. And then secondly, we're driving the performance by ultimately creating content that's more useful because it contains relevant information. So that's a quick introduction to me and to Spirable.
Brilliant, and thanks ever so much. Brings me to my first question. With 2020 being such a unique and strange year for sports and sports betting, events being cancelled all over the shop due to the pandemic, it really resulted in an overall acceleration of digital growth and digital transformation. Just update us as we're almost halfway through 2021 now, but how has 2021 been so far? What impact of 2020 are you seeing on the year?
Yeah, sure. So, I think it's been one of those once in a lifetime things. From what we work with a lot of sports betting clients. We also work across other verticals like CPG, so big kind of global brands and alcohol brands. A lot of it, we've seen a trend in terms of 2020 allowing brands, giving them essentially a bit of breathing space to look a bit more deeply at how they address their creative needs and understand the most effective process. I think the need for automation and workflows, even workflows that suit distributed teams. So it's very likely that the the way people work in the future is going to be more and more remote, and less about people sitting in teams next to each other where communication flows. So the need for, especially from a creative and media point of view, so you've got creative teams that are creating the content, you've got media teams who are buying the media and deploying the campaigns. You need workflows, and we've seen quite a few brands reassessing how they do that and moving to a platform like Spirable that essentially gives that full end-to-end workflow. And I think that's certainly something that that would have been happening more gradually if it wasn't for 2020. I think that's certainly accelerated that. On the media side, we've seen social channels continue to be more significant for brands in terms of media investment. So that shift has been happening. I think it's been accelerated in 2020, where brands realize more and more that the conversation, especially around sports, they're happening on social. So something we work with big global brands like Heineken, who leverage sports data, and something like the Euros is very important for them, or the Champions League, to be part of the conversation. So their ads ultimately don't feel like ads because they create ads that include sports data, and we've seen that pent up demand from brands to get involved in sports more and more. And 2021, and I think it's giving us a lot to be optimistic about. The Euros, like I said, and having certainty that it's going to take place. I think that's the big thing that people are quite relieved about. That we know the event's going to happen. Okay, there's going to be less people in the stands, but there's certainly a move forward. We've got a lot of brands really getting involved in that conversation. Obviously, sports betting is huge, but these other brands like Heineken are really getting involved as well. So great momentum, and I think we're looking forward to the Euros and more events after it.
Yeah, it's crazy to say that, isn't it? That just a guarantee that it will take place is such a big thing. 2 years ago, if you had said that, you would have been baffled. But yeah, it is crazy. Yeah. And it's great as a fan to know that it's going ahead as well. And well, welcome back, Daniel. It's good to have you with us now. I will allow you to introduce yourself and just get reacquainted with the conversation before I fire some questions at you.
Yeah, sorry guys for missing the beginning, but it's actually quite typical for these times, right? Everybody working in the cloud. At least you didn't have to give me one of those "you're on mute." Daniel Toledo, Head of Performance Marketing for Entain. I manage a team of digital experts, varying from affiliates to paid social to search, digital experts, quite broad. I specifically work for Ladbrokes and Coral, which are very traditional UK betting brands. And I focus with my activity on the British market, so UK and also Ireland. What else do you want to know from me, Joe?
Well,
what did I miss?
We were just sort of updating on, after a crazy 2020, obviously, we're now almost halfway through 2021. Just a little market update, just what's been going on, what was the impact of 2020 on 2021 so far?
It has been a crazy year for everybody listening, and also for you guys probably. I think first of all, mentally, it had quite some impact on myself and the team. People were isolated, they had to work from home, and it required a whole different way of working. So we had to adapt quick. With regards to the work itself, I think we were one of the few industries that were quite privileged that we could keep working. With respect to my colleagues working in the traveling industry or any other industry, they have probably been very impacted. I mean, there were no flights to sell. So we, as Entain, we're a betting gambling company. So we offer entertainment to our clients. And I think with people stuck at home, nothing to do, looking for a way out to escape from this harsh reality that we were in, entertainment was actually quite a good industry to be in. So we have seen pretty stable performance and see things ramp up because of that trend. So 2020 and also the beginning of 2021 has been quite good for us as a company. But like I said, it required a new way of working. And that was something that was really interesting for us. To do all these meetings face to face through the webcam, it put a lot of pressure on myself and also on the team. We had full calendars, everybody. A lot of people complaining about having no time to actually execute the work because they were on these meetings all the time. And that's something that definitely impacted us. I'm now back in the office since 2 weeks, and I can just walk over when I want to get something done. So that's a big game changer. That's 2021 for us so far. So really good performance. We've seen a lot of people taking up betting and casino on our end. People looking for a way out, look for entertainment. And we could also see that when the lockdown came to an end in the UK, that the intent dropped a bit. So people were turning back to normal lives, looking for entertainment elsewhere.
And the trends of, we saw a lot of new trends of 2020 consumer trends. Have they been retained as we've moved through 2021?
So for us personally, we try to develop a lot as marketeers. I mean, we have to. We have iOS 14.5 being released. We need to adapt. Next year, we'll probably get to there. We have the removal of third-party cookies. We need to adapt. I think it's quite normal for us digital marketeers to adapt to an industry that is quite new and is always changing. We try to make changes in 2020. We believe that as a company, if you don't innovate and don't try to improve, you're stuck in old habits and you're not expanding and growing as a company. So we try to automate as much as we can. One of the things that we work with together with Spirable is the creative story around paid social. Traditionally, we used to do everything manually, which cost a lot of time, both for my team to request everything, to set everything up, but also from our internal studio. They had to fulfill our demand, which is crazy because we want to support every single event out there. So we were looking for a solution that would save us manpower, but also gave us a creative solution at scale. So that's something that we onboarded. Before, 100% of our spend was going towards a manual creative solution. Nowadays, we made the shift to 95% fully automated. And we can see the output of it. Despite people being fully booked for meetings, we took a bit of the pressure away by automating part of the journey in paid social. What we also have seen, because this is the creative piece, is that the industry is also changing quite a lot. If you compare Google compared to a few years ago, it's much more like a black box. You give your budget, you give what you try to achieve, you give your CPA goal, and they will do the rest for you. And I think that Facebook is heading in the same direction more and more. When I was doing Facebook myself hands-on about 10 years ago, we were really building out a lot of micro audiences, and we tried to design it very specific. So we want to target a man between 18 and 25 that likes this and this brand, and we want him to have this and this behavior. What you see nowadays is that it's becoming more and more of a black box. So with that in mind, with all of these partners that we work with moving towards automation, because they know the customer better than us, I think the creative piece becomes more and more important. And this is one of the reasons why we move to automation. It gives us creatives a scale that actually matches the way that Facebook wants to operate as well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. And Dave, how do you feel marketing tactics have changed today compared to marketing tactics of yesterday?
Yeah, it's I think there's and Daniel's touched on it. There's just today there's across social display there's a ton of complexity for advertisers. If you go back 10, 15 years, it was a lot simpler. It was a lot more straightforward. I think what we have now is more channels, more formats than ever before. And ultimately the effort required to just keep up, to just run, campaigns on these channels is overwhelming. So that taking away the fact from doing what is kind of like optimizing your creative, data-driven creative, all that thing aside, just to keep up, it's overwhelming. So the tactics used like today, it has to be cross-channel. So brands need to be on different channels. They need to have different strategies across the funnel, and there needs to be, there needs to be that layer of automation that just takes out the manual effort and frees up the people, to think about actually, strategy and value add. And that's really what we focus on, is just anything that can be automated, we help to automate. And then the people in the teams, like Daniel's team, have that headspace to go, okay, well, let's do some test and learn. Let's layer in some data. Let's do live data. Let's really look at the toolbox of tactics that we can deploy now that we've automated away the complexity. So I think a lot of it's only moving in one direction. There will be more channels. There will be more placements. There'll be more things. So automation is the kind of key thing for us, that we see brands, once they deploy it and they get that in place, then they can start moving up to kind of what Google actually calls the creative maturity framework. And I think it's a great way of capturing a kind of a 4 stages of a journey from very basic all the way to advanced. And that's something that I think, for brands to kind of understand where they are in that creative maturity framework, and then automating everything that they can so that they can get closer to more advanced, is where they really start unlocking performance.
Brilliant. And yeah, Daniel, if you had anything to add on that, I know you gave quite an in-depth answer before, but.
No, I think Dave got it spot on.
Yeah.
It's all about testing and learning. It's all about testing new capabilities with these partners. Google, as an example, has a lot of new bid mechanics that are rolling out. We don't know yet if they're good for us or not, so we need to test it. Facebook, the algorithm is changing all the time. We need to keep testing and learning. We not be satisfied with the results that we got yesterday. And that's why we also need like a lot of creatives at scale. I feel that I have less and less control of the audience that I'm actually reaching. So I try to influence the part that I actually can control.
There's been a lot of talk about data and privacy, and there's even been moves by companies like Apple to restrict tracking capabilities. How, if at all, do you think this will impact sports betting advertising?
You want to take it first?
Daniel, do you want to jump in? Yeah, you go first, mate.
I can take it. I think, first of all, it's very interesting what's happening out there. Like I said, we digital marketeers, we're used to change and we always adapt. I think the discussion about privacy is a fair one. Customers need to be protected, or we as individuals. We don't want our data to be sold. However, there's like, you can look at it from a different angle, which is an interesting angle for me. There's 3 sides here. There's the customer who want to use products from Facebook and from Snapchat and for Google for free. Facebook, they build their business model around the fact that they can sell ads. That's why it's free for the customer. And we use the Facebook platform to serve relevant ads. With the shift that I'm seeing is that what will happen is that we will be less effective from an advertising point of view. We will probably go more broad. We will go more interest targeting. While today, with all the cookie data in place, we're able to serve the right ad to the right customer. So for me personally, when I scroll through my Facebook feed, I often see ads that are quite relevant to my needs. And it's my choice whether I engage or not. I think with the privacy talks that are happening and with the changes that we're seeing, I think the advertising will be more broad. And I don't know if it's necessarily a good experience for the customer, in all honesty. I mean, I don't have a dog, but it can be that in a bit I'm going to see ads for dog food. Only because I visited a dog website once, potentially. I don't know. It feels that we're on the edge of something interesting. For now, what I see is that advertising will be more broad, potentially less interesting for customers. And it will be interesting for me to see what companies like Facebook will do. If they see their advertising investment or the revenue drop because customers like us are investing less with Facebook because we don't see the numbers come in, I wonder what they will do. Maybe we go to a world where people that opt in for advertising will get some freebies that other people will not get. We're on the edge of something interesting, and I don't think that we know yet what this interesting will look like from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the landscape is evolving really quickly. So we kind of have to see how it plays out. But I guess one thing that we believe firmly in is the power of the creative. So targeting capabilities on platforms across the web will evolve and change, and the macro kind of outlook here is that privacy will become more important. So I think that's the one thing that's for sure. So and Daniel, you touched on it, which is like what's in your control and what's outside of your control. You feel like the media side is becoming outside your control, and I think that's not going to shift back. That's the macro trend. What you put out in terms of creative, that's 100% in your control, and it's then what level of targeting. And I think it kind of means social channels probably become even more relevant because they're first-party data on how a user engages with content within their platform, allows them to bring this basically what they indicate and what they interact with. So what they indicate is I'm interested in the NFL. What I interact with might be golf, but I'm not. So they can draw a picture of kind of this group of users, this audience are interested in the NFL or golf, and they can do that on a fairly still on a fairly good detailed level. And I think social platforms will become platforms where you'll have more of this ability because they control more of that. And then I think the creative that you deliver becomes really important. So making that creative more relevant, updating, with offers or countdowns or game schedules, making that creative work harder and be more relevant becomes the kind of, that's focusing on that kind of future-proofs you to a certain degree because you have the most control over that element.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, and yeah, it's exciting. In a way, it's exciting to see how the creative works on social, and how companies approach that. And I guess it sort of brings me to ask if privacy and a data-driven approach can work together and they can be collaborative.
So I can give our thoughts on that, and it kind of comes back to our vision that I mentioned at the beginning, which is centered around inspiring people with useful content. So like you've got to create that reason for someone to engage with the content, and I think sports betting as a industry has a great ability to do that because there's just so much variety in terms of what's happening every day. But I think if people are asking questions when they see an ad like, how do they know that about me, or where do they get that data from? That's not where we should be. Like I think that's fair to say, and that's what we're moving away from. And I think on the other hand, if I'm on Facebook and I like the Giants Facebook page, I'm obviously interested in NFL, and I receive an ad from a sports betting company about an upcoming Giants game. And it has some animated charts dynamically created about stats of key stats, and that becomes kind of automated creative that's useful and relevant. And I think that's data driven and privacy working together because, well, there's a valid reason for this ad to be shown to me. So I think that's where you can have both and have a really nice synergy.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I think the future is going to be more towards interest targeting / contextual. And indeed, like the example that you gave, if we know that people like a certain, are fan of a certain football, in Europe we say football, but you mean soccer. So football, actual football, okay?
Controversial.
Yeah. If we know that they like a team from the Premier League, that's better, right? We are able to still target those people, which increases the likability that they will still convert with the ad. So we need to change our approach a bit. And like Dave said, it also means that we need to up our game from the part that we can control, which is the creative approach. I like the direction that Dave gave, like having creatives with data plugged into it. We are doing that partially already. We are pushing creatives out there that have a live connection with our feed on the website. and we can show customers what the odds are to bet on certain games. But there's so much out there that we're not touching yet. In reality, everything that you have on site, every piece of data that you have available, you could push it on a creative. I think that the challenge is how you can make those creatives as appealing as possible to still reach an audience that has the ability to engage with your creative, to make sure that the journey still stays relevant for people, and make sure that, for me as an advertiser, to make sure that I don't have a lot of wastage in my spend, because in the end it's all about ROI for us. But I also keep in mind that the customer experience needs to be good, and that's the interesting piece. Can the customer experience still be good after all these privacy changes that we're seeing? I think it can. It will just be different, than it is today.
And and what do you think it takes to sort of implement a creative process that sort of can easily produce all these different creative versions?
So that's the thing. I think if you do the manual things that we used to do, I think it takes a lot of manpower and effort to make things happen. What's good about automated solutions is that you can deliver creatives at scale. And where before you had to wait a few hours to get 10 versions of almost the same creatives, here you just log in, you make some tweaks, and you roll out the creatives. And if you do it really well, it's all automated, so you don't do a thing. You can actually schedule for a week on a weekly base to get 20, 100 versions of Premier League creatives with just a click of a button. And that's a major change. What is still very important is the test and learn piece. It's not about getting creatives, but it's getting creatives out there with a vision. So you need to do everything what you do with an idea behind it, and don't accept what you have. Always try to evolve it to a higher level. What's also interesting is that nowadays, because I'm a market that is focusing on English purely, right? But imagine that you're a company that is working in 20 different geos. It means that you need to duplicate everything that you're doing times 20, everything in a different language. And it might be that because of cultural differences, you need to tweak images slightly. I think these automated solutions are the future for companies to be sustainable. I don't think it's about hiring 10 more people to make these creatives happen. I would use technology more and more.
And I'd probably hire 10 more strategists, or people who can really dig into that test and learn piece, right? Which is where you're going to get the most value from the automated solutions.
Yeah, BI analysts. I'm a really big fan of data, and I make all my decisions, and so does my team, based on data. So data is always out there. Maybe the level of data will change, but I mean, if you look at Facebook, CTR is always a good indicator, right? Whether your customers like your creative or not. I believe that we need more to work more closely with our internal BI team, and if we do that well, then we can win with all the technology out there.
Absolutely, I think that's exactly right. And just from how do we think about it when we're working with brands like Entain? Our first step is understanding what they're doing manually. Who are the stakeholders? What's the manual process? Because if we understand that, then we can start. Well, first step is let's plug in and automate the pieces where that we can automate. So once that's in place and we've kind of got that foundation, and it's then about, okay, now you're saving all this time. Let's talk about it. And it goes back to Google's creative maturity framework. Let's get the basics, the foundation in place. And then let's start looking at kind of more strategies that can help you to move to be more advanced and do more test and learn, more data driven, and really, there is no end game. There's no kind of point that you get to and you're done. With digital, you're always iterating. You're always up against new channels, new challenges. So you kind of have to be agile, and you have to automate away what can be automated and get the brain power focusing on the stuff that's, that constant iteration of, testing, and that's where you start unlocking performance. So it's not about just doing one data-driven campaign and thinking, does it work or not? Well, no, it doesn't work. It's a much more kind of longer process that needs to be adopted. And I think that's what's been great about working with Entain. It's really a journey. It's not, it's not. They're entering into it with absolutely the kind of we have the vision here of what we want to achieve. I think it's great to partner with brands like that.
Yeah, and in terms of results, I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing, what are the impact of this data-driven approach.
What I can see is that with an automated solution in place, you're able to do more. You can push more products that you normally wouldn't push. And we've seen pretty good results without mentioning specifics, okay? But I can tell you that we have ramped up our spend massively. We're talking about 20 to 40% increase in spend, while still being very efficient, because the creatives that we roll out there are very relevant for the customer that receives them, and they actually stand out. Don't forget that everybody is on their phone, looking at Facebook, scrolling, and what's really important is that you have like 1 or 2 seconds to make an impression, to catch the eye of people. And what we're doing definitely does that. So what we did is we ramped up our spend massively without wastage. So the conversion rates are really good. In some areas, they actually improved, which means that our cost per acquired customer is pretty stable, and the ROI massively increased by onboarding a solution like this.
Yeah, and I think it's we definitely follow the same process with clients, which is the efficiency piece, which is how can we automate away that heavy lifting, and then that opens up the opportunity to do more, more strategies, more tactics that unlock the performance. So it really is. I think the key thing is it is a journey. It is about really buying in and adopting the technology, and then the exciting part is kind of when you free up those resources and you start doing new strategies and you start learning and you iterate. That's where there's just a ton of value. So yeah, it's definitely that efficiency piece plus the performance that it unlocks.
Brilliant. And just to round us off, I'm conscious of time. We're running a little bit short on time, but just to round us off, look into the crystal ball, and you've both pretty much touched on it quite a bit during the chat, but to sort of finish, to bring it home, what does the future of customer engagement look like for the sports betting industry, if you were to predict?
Want me to take it one, Dave?
You go first, Sonia.
Yeah, we complete each other nicely, right, so far. I think the future is an interesting one, and it's very hard to answer that question. We don't know what Facebook is going to do in the next year. We don't know how the war between Facebook and Apple will end up. We don't know what the impact will be of the removal of third-party cookies. It's all guessing. Nobody has the actual answer yet. All of us try to prepare for something that we don't know. It's basically, that there's going to be a car crash, but you don't know how bad the car will look like. That's how I look at it. What I am focusing on with my team, which is really key for us, is that we want to make sure that we still deliver high quality ads out there to an audience that wants to receive the message. And very important is that we keep responsible gambling in mind as well. That's something that in particular in the UK has a very large focus on it. And that's something that we keep in mind as well. So what the future will be from a technological point of view with regards to cookies and which platform will win the digital war, I can't answer that for you. But to answer for myself, customer first, deliver very relevant, almost personalized journeys around topics that people have a very high interest in. And I think that we have some leg room there, steps to take. With RG in mind, responsible gambling, that's where I see the future heading towards.
Brilliant. And yeah, that's a tough penultimate answer to follow, but I will let you have a go.
Yeah, sure. So from our side, I think there's 2 things that we're focused on in terms of customer engagement. I think one is the importance of first-party data, so CRM data. So it's always been there. It's always been important. I think it's even more important now. And I think so. Something we work in outside of what we do on the ad side is we create millions of personalized videos for sports teams and brands. So it's where you've got that one-to-one relationship with the individual. You can send a personalized video that uses 10, 20 pieces of data to create a really unique piece of content. So for one of the Manchester football teams, actually, Joe, and I'm not sure it's the one that you follow if I'm looking at the jersey on the wall. We do millions of personalized videos with the name of the fan on the back of the jersey, and the contract with your name in it and the manager signing it, and that sort of content. I think that building those relationships, customer engagement, a lot of it will come back to the basics of CRM and first-party data, and I think content sits in the center. So content here it becomes central to how people engage their customers, whether it's paid or whether it's the CRM channels. So I think that's one. And just to finish, we've spent 2 years in R&D on a creative AI product that I think is really exciting. That's really going to help brands to understand more about why their creative works, and it actually helps to kind of make sure that the creative that you're going to run is going to perform. And I think that's an exciting space for us. That I think we're layering in more AI into automation, and I think that's going to have a big impact on the industry as well. So a few of the things that are front and top of mind for us.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Thanks. Really insightful stuff. Thank you both ever so much, and thanks for the questions. I apologize if we didn't get to them. I'm sure we will be able to follow up with you and get to them. And yeah, really appreciate your time, guys. And I look forward to seeing how the sector plays out in the long term and also in the short term with the Euros coming up. So thanks ever so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.